Common Ground, Conversations Shaping the UK-India Relationship and Future. My name is Lakshmi Kaul, and I'm bringing you the UK-India series for Global Order. Today, we have with us an inspirational member of the Indian diaspora in the UK. He's the founder and chief executive officer of Fair Growth, a platform focused on building inclusive, innovative, and sustainable growth. In his previous avatar, you know him as the Deputy Mayor of London for Business. He served 2 terms as the Deputy Mayor of London for Business, 2016 to 2023. He has served as the Chair of London and Partners, Chair of London's Jobs and Skills Partnership Board. He has been the Deputy Chair of the London Economic Action Partnership, the LEAP. He's also served as a board member of the City UK, championing the UK's financial and professional services sector. He's also chair of Space for Labour, advancing dialogue between policymakers, industry, and academia on the UK's space and frontier technology ambitions. As a board advisor at B4NZ, he collaborates with banks, businesses, and regulators to support the transition to net zero emissions. He's also served as chair of Oxfam's Enterprise Development Programme, a board member of the Indus Entrepreneurs Thai UK, a trustee of the Sherry Blair Foundation for Women, and a patron of the Prince's Trust, now the King's Trust. He is the chair of Labour Friends of India, working to strengthen the relationship between the UK Labour Party, the British Indian community, and India. A man who is beyond inspirational for many who dare to dream. I'm absolutely thrilled to be welcoming my dear friend Rajesh Agrawal to Common Ground today. Namaskar, Rajesh ji.
Namaskar. What a pleasure to be here and to see you here, Lakshmi ji.
It's wonderful to have you here. With very humble beginnings, Rajesh ji, the story of this young man from Indore, I believe, needs to be told. So let's start with that, and we would love to hear for you to share your story with our listeners.
Well, it is very, very exciting. I'm like millions and millions of young Indians. I was born in a lower middle class family in Indore, and Indore. Now Indore is absolutely phenomenal and thriving, and it's the cleanest city of India and doing some amazing, wonderful work. But it was more or less a sleepy town back then when I grew up. And my mother was a school teacher. My father was a mechanic working for the Madhya Pradesh government. But I had good education, and Indian families' focus on education was extremely high. So went to a good school in Indore, finished my education, did my MBA from Indore, and then I was working in Chandigarh briefly, followed by Mumbai. Very interesting that these days data centers are quite in fashion. I actually started my career in India selling website design and web hosting. So I still remember we used to, for 5,000 rupees, we used to do 1 year of domain name registration and 5 MB of web space, which is unthinkable now. But that's what we used to do. And I remember I used to live in Mumbai, and then I got an opportunity to come to London. And at the age of 24, I had a Hero Honda motorcycle in India for many, many years, which was with me in Indore, and then it was with me in Chandigarh, and then in Mumbai. I sold that, and it gave me enough money to buy a one-way ticket to London. And I still remember the day I landed at Heathrow Airport. We all do, don't we? All the immigrants remember their first day in their new adapted country. So I landed at Heathrow Airport with 200 pounds in my pocket. I'd never been on a plane before, never been outside India before, and I had no family, no networks in the UK. But when I landed, it had a very positive vibe to it, because we've all seen London, even if we have not visited through Bollywood films and cricket and all kinds of things. I then worked in a small foreign exchange company and in IT support. So I was fixing computers under the desks and things like that, and did that for a while. But I was great talking to people. I enjoyed meeting people. I used to go out at a lot of events and so on. And it was wonderful to learn more about the British culture, the way of life, how the work is done, the professional sort of ways of working, and so on. And it was great learning. And then at the age of 27, I started my first business in foreign exchange and cross-border payments, which is now called fintech. So it wasn't called fintech then, and it wasn't as cool as it is now. But I did that, and it became a grand success, which was brilliant, with all the hard work and blessings of my parents and great team, and we sort of built some amazing technology, and we became one of the fastest growing companies in the country. And we had a lot of fun along the way. We were the shirt sponsors of Birmingham City Football Club. We used to sponsor Formula One teams. It was great fun. But I was young, idealistic, and naive. I'm still idealistic and somewhat naive. I'm not so much young anymore. But I wanted to change the world. I still do. And that's why I got involved with more charity work. And I thought, making money, I started finding it a bit more mundane, and I wanted to do more things. So I got involved with Oxfam, where we were helping rural entrepreneurs in some of the most deprived parts of the world, by helping them growing their cooperative or a syndicate or whatever they might be running, farmers or dairy farmers, beekeepers in Ethiopia, and so on. Worked with Sherry Blair Foundation for Women, where we were helping women entrepreneurs in different parts of the world, with the Princess Trust, where we're helping young entrepreneurs in the UK. But then I quickly realized that if you want to really change the world at a big scale, you've got to get involved in politics and policy. So I got myself more involved in the Labour Party, and ended up being deputy mayor of the greatest city on earth, London, in 2016, which was, who would have thought? Somebody who sort of came to London, 15 years by then, 14 years, and I became deputy mayor of London. And that is the greatness of London, that it can give that opportunity to people. And I still remember when I was announced as a deputy mayor, my parents, I only told them a day before that this is what I'm planning to do. And like a typical sort of middle-class parents, they're like, why do you want to go in politics? Your business is doing all right, and just focus on that. And I said, no, I want to do this. And it was amazing. What an opportunity and honor to serve the city that I love so dearly. And I did a lot in that period, because I was appointed 6 days after the Brexit referendum. So thrown straight in the deep end. But what a great pleasure and honor to work for London.
Yeah, I remember that time, and we were delighted to see you, becoming the deputy mayor of London for business, led by an Indian man. It's a great, it was a great time. We still continue to be proud of you. So you rightly said that you were appointed just at the crux of when Brexit, referendum was announced, and you literally navigated the many unraveling contours of Brexit during your tenure as deputy mayor. At a time, of course, there was so much suspicion about London losing its relevance. There were many debates I remember myself being part of. Your team built that slogan, London is open. With high taxes and so much economic turbulence again today, what do you think is London's relevance and openness to international business and investors today?
Well, one of the great things about London has that is a city that has reinvented itself several times, and it is very good at doing that. And I still remember when I became deputy mayor, there was a huge amount of uncertainty, both political and economic, because the prime minister at the time had resigned, David Cameron, and the pound has dropped significantly. Businesses were facing a huge amount of uncertainty, what it meant for them, and so on. And that's why we thought it's very important that, first of all, we reassure businesses that London continues to remain open, and send this message out to the world, because people from around the world saw Brexit as an act of sort of London looking inwards and UK looking inwards. And we said, no, that's not the case. London will continue to remain open to people, to ideas, for investment, for business, for students, for visitors, for tourists, for everybody alike. London will continue to remain open. So that's why we launched that campaign. And of course, I just be on records. I thought UK's future is better within the EU, and EU is stronger with UK in it. But we live in a sort of democratic country, and you have to respect the democratic will of the people. And that's why we sort of delivered on Brexit. And London's strengths in the traditional areas of finance, creative industries, education, universities, and many other things, and remained intact. And one of the greatest things about London is it's the hub for the world. 40% of the London's population was actually not born in the UK. So it's truly a melting pot. People come from around the world, make this city their home. They contribute hugely to London. And I'll give you a data point. When I became deputy mayor, the number of tech unicorn businesses in London were in single digits, 5, 6, 7, something like that in 2016. By the time I had finished, there were over 100 tech unicorns in London. So we went through this tech revolution over a period of time, and a lot of them were built on our traditional strengths. So of course we are very strong on finance. So you combine that with tech. You've got fintech. London's the sort of fintech capital of the world. There are more fintech companies than any other city in the world. You've got universities, great education establishments. You combine tech with that. Again, a good edutech, advertising industry, edtech, creative industries. By the way, another data point, last year, for the first time, more Hollywood films were shot in London than Hollywood itself, than Los Angeles. So London's the great sort of center for creative industries, for film shooting, for post-production work, and so on. So a lot of those things will sort of continue. London, it's still sort of rule of law. The time zone is very beneficial for the UK because it overlaps with 98% of the world's GDP. So the traditional strengths of London remain very intact, and London continues to absolutely thrive. And thank goodness that the food scene has improved so much in the last 25 years, because when I first came to London, the food wasn't that great, let's be honest. But now we are turning to be a food capital of the world, because we are only, little bit away from sort of surpassing Paris as the number of in terms of number of Michelin star restaurants. So we've got huge variety of cuisines and so on, which is very important. And of course, we receive more international tourists than any other city in the world. So London continues to remain that very strong destination for trade, investment, people, students. We've got more universities than any other city in the world. We have got more international students, more Indian students than any other city in the world. And all those things continue despite Brexit and all the global turmoil that we see today.
Correct. And recently we saw the signing of the India-UK Free Trade Agreement at long last. I mean, it was congratulations. It was your party that delivered the UK-India Free Trade Agreement, which many of us thought had been kicked in the long grass for whenever. So really grateful that that happened. But one wonders then, what is the future of the UK-India, trade and business corridor? Where are the business ties going with all the energy crisis that's looming, the war, all of these things that we are faced with? There's crisis after crisis. So where are we headed in the UK-India corridor?
Well, UK and India are truly natural partners. And I don't say that just as a slogan, I mean that very seriously. And the future is fantastically bright. I mean, let me just quickly talk about the sort of FTA which was delivered by the Labour Party. And Labour Party, by the way, also delivered and signed off the Indian independence in 1947 because it was part of Labour Party's election manifesto in 1945, committing to support self-determination for India in 1945. And then they won the election, and Clement Attlee at the time, and they sort of signed off. The Labour Party has been a very, very pro-India party, and I'm very glad that the FTA has been signed under sort of Labour Party sort of administrations and delivered. But I think there is a lot of work that still needs doing, because you need to activate that. What does actually that FTA means, and how do businesses make the most use of it on both sides is very important. So I think that is very good. What UK has is amazing IP. They're very good at inventions. They're very good at creating intellectual property. And what India brings to the table is scale. And India, and a great example of that is the COVID vaccine. The most widely used COVID vaccine in the world was invented here in Oxford, and then mass manufactured in India and saved millions of lives around the world. It's a great example of UK-India partnership, and I see, that's like a good template in a way. So there's big opportunity for UK companies and Indian companies to work together. There's a lot of areas of cooperation, education being one of them, and I'm very glad now 6 or 7 British universities have already, got permission to open campuses in India. I know Southampton University has already started in this academic year in India. A number of British schools have opened in India. Harrow School, Shrewsbury has opened in Bhopal, near Indore, and so education is one big area. Public administration, I know there's a lot of sort of cooperation on that front. Tech, already, I mean, Indian software companies do huge amount of business, billions and billions of pounds worth of business in the UK already. So on the tech, there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate. On the environment, another area, culture, again, huge number of sort of Bollywood films are being shot here, and a lot of post-production work is being done between London and India. One of the biggest post-production companies in London is actually Indian-owned, DNEG. And they always win a lot of Oscars and so on, but it's sort of Indian-owned. So the future is very bright, and there are a lot of areas where we can do more. Manufacturing, I think we can do more, because manufacturing, UK is very good on services, so legal services of the UK are fantastic. Accountancy services, professional consulting services, etc. UK is very good at. India is superb at manufacturing. They've got the scale. They can, bring in a cost-efficient manner. So a lot of sectors where it can be sort of cooperated.
And you've advocated jobs creation and enterprise development and skill development throughout your tenure. I mean, I think you continue to kind of champion the cause, even in your current sort of, space. Where do you think the service industry is going? And both countries have been protectionist in some way or the other. So, do you think the trade agreement and the associated agreements that have been signed on the sidelines are creating or paving a way for a bit more open economy in both countries?
100%. And look, I think the opportunity is absolutely immense. But again, like any deal, you need to then activate it. Just signing on dotted line is not enough. And we need to market it. We need to take it to our businesses in our respective countries and tell them that here is an opportunity. We need to tell the British businesses that here is an opportunity to do more with India. And we need to go to Indian businesses, and that there's more opportunity to do in the UK. And of course, India has signed the wider agreement with the EU as well. So which is great news. One of the great assets that UK has is the British Indian community, and it's just in London alone there are about 1 million people of Indian heritage. Nationwide, there must be about 2.5 million people of Indian heritage. And they are as Prime Minister Modi describes, the living bridge between the two countries. And they are truly the ambassadors of India here. And they do huge amount of work to strengthen the relationship between the two countries. And I remember when the Prime Minister Keir Starmer went to India not too long ago, he took a huge delegation, the biggest ever taken by any British Prime Minister, 125, I think, is the plane full of sort of delegates from all different sort of sectors and industries, and a lot of good work has been done. I mean, the British High Commission's outpost in India is the biggest outside anywhere in the world. So I think the strengths are there, and a lot more can be done. My interest is not just about the big companies, but about SMEs and how do we reach out to those sort of small industrial towns in India where they are aware that more work can be done. We can export to the UK, or we can import from the UK, and just or we can have some sort of technological collaboration with the UK. So it's not just the very big businesses, because very big businesses always find a way. I mean, of course, there's Tata JLR and likes of those who do business here hugely. But it's the SMEs which I think we need to focus massively on going forward. And the scale-up companies in India are already very ambitious, doing a lot. Another data point, when I first started as deputy mayor, I focused a lot on India. India was the fourth largest investor in London. By the time I'd finished with all the effort and I opened 3 offices across India to market London and to help Indian companies come into London, by the time I'd finished, India became the largest investor in London. So that shows the might of India and how India has grown over the years. But equally, it shows the willingness on both sides to do business.
Absolutely. And you're right about inclusive growth being on agenda, for India especially. So the recent AI summit that I know that you attended and participated in had that inclusive digital access and growth agenda. So I'm curious because you're obviously a techie businessman, politician, you're everything. So what are your impressions of the AI development in India and the scope of growth, inclusive or exclusive, of AI in India, and the connect between UK and India, how UK can support that agenda for India?
Again, India is a superpower when it comes to talent. It's absolutely phenomenal. AI talent, I mean, tech talent in India is absolutely mind-boggling. I always see technology as a great leveler. It can sort of level society. A bunch of bright people sitting in a garage can champion and compete with a Fortune 500 company and can challenge some of the biggest companies in the world. And that's what happens. That's what sort of technology enables one to do. It also, we know in India how, technology has empowered so many people. These coaching classes, physics wala, and all. I mean, how technology has been used to transform the lives of millions and millions of people, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's, even in sort of public services. Whether it's around sort of how you file your taxes, around how you do digital payments, which is India is, by the way, does handle more digital payments than any other country, and actually many countries put together, like one of the sort of biggest ecosystem of digital payments. So the AI will accelerate that even further, and India is very well positioned to take advantage of that. However, like anywhere else in the world, it will also create challenges because a lot of junior jobs will either change or will be lost. But a lot of new jobs will be created. And that is where the opportunity lies. So our eyes should be focused on what new jobs could be created, whether our workforce is ready to take advantage of this new wave, because you cannot stop technology from coming. Technology is here and it's here to stay, and it's coming more and more. Advanced technologies are coming even quicker now. So we need to be prepared. There's an old saying that when the winds of change blow, some people build walls, some people build
Windmills.
windmills.
Yeah.
And we should be the one building windmills, taking advantage of this change rather than worrying about it. Inclusivity should be at the heart of it. Nobody should be left behind. We don't want a situation where a small handful of companies or a handful of countries actually hold all the power, and they hold all the technology and they hold all the data and so on. It should be more equitable, and that's why I was impressed by Prime Minister Modi's vision that he gave. Don't test me on the full form of it, but the acronym is MANAV, He called it MANAV. But that sums up how AI should be used around the world. And it's a big challenge for the policymakers as well, because you have to, like, freedom of speech versus how do you prepare the sort of guardrails without strangling innovation. So you need that sort of fine balance between the two.
And that also brings us to this whole debate about digital colonialism, right? I mean, we are seeing that because so many languages are spoken in India, that access will only happen. Of course, we have Bhashini and other kind of AI, platforms, but there's still so much work to be done, which obviously means that there is so much scope of development and scope of partnership between the two countries. They are familiar with each other. The governance systems are the same, even the GDPR laws and things like that. India sort of worked very closely with the UK and Europe on. What is your reading of AI governance? How do we manage this beast that we are still trying to familiarize ourselves with?
Still early days. I mean, UK is kind of leading the way in the world, but we are all sort of learning about these new sort of technologies, and technology moves much faster. I always used to say that technology moves very fast. Consumer behavior sort of follows that, and then the regulators and the policy sort of is always playing catch up. It's a bit like that, isn't it? We're trying to sort of understand this bit better. But the new Online Safety Act in the UK, I think, addresses some of it. But we need to make sure that the human bias is not built in the AI. And I'll give you an example. If somebody, let's say, AI starts making decisions around in a bank about who gets the loan, we know that certain communities find it harder to get the loan. So it's quite important that bias. I mean, even in Silicon Valley, 92% of these startups that are funded by VCs have got no women founders. It's a very sort of so whether it's gender, whether it's sort of certain races, whether it's certain communities, we need to make sure that it's actually human bias is not replicated in the way. If anything, it should remove that human bias, and it become even fairer way of doing things. But it's also a huge opportunity on the education part. I think AI is new. We are still learning, because it's like when you talk to your sort of any of the AI tools. First of all, it's very flattering. It thinks is your best friends, and of course, if it tells you you're an idiot, you're not going to talk. You'll stop using that tool. So it's a bit sort of sycophancy is there. But so you need to also, when you are using the AI tool, you need to sort of mold it a little bit in the way you want it, so that it is used properly. So I think how to use an AI tool in itself is a bit of a learning that is required, but it's got huge implications around medical science. For example, scanning, we'll be able to predict so many things, and when quantum combines with AI, even more powerful, the drug discovery will accelerate. The drugs that we wouldn't have discovered for decades, it will happen over next sort of few years. So it will do wonders for the mankind. But it's not going to take over the world, so don't worry. I think people often worry about sort of AI taking over the world, and it's not quite that. But it's a great tool, and it's a tool that, like anything, when sort of fire was invented, like when humans could make fire. I mean, you need to be careful about it, and then you start learning, how to use it more sensibly.
Yeah, you're right. And you talked about the Living Bridge, and you're an immigrant yourself, and such a great story. What is your view of the UK government's current immigration policy? Of course, we've seen that US continues to make it, unfortunately, difficult for immigrants to live and work there. Do you think you see any time where UK will become that protectionist and will perhaps follow that example? And what is the angst or concern among the Indian diaspora now, looking at what's happening around?
Well, immigrants have built Britain, frankly. Immigrants have played a very important role in where Britain is today in so many positive ways. Whether it's running our public services, the NHS, the schools, the hospitals, the care homes, whether it's our police force, whether it's everyday lives, running from a news agent around the corner all the way to very big FTSE 100 companies, our tech companies, running our educational establishments. Immigrants have been a great, great asset and been a good thing. And it has enriched British culture. And culture, one great thing about culture is that culture is not something steady, set in stone. Culture is very fluid. It's an organic thing, and anything which is lively and organic, only dead things don't change. But anything which is organic always sort of evolves and changes. And our New Britain is we need to make sure that it feels and stands confident in that its sort of new form. In a way, immigration has been a great force of good. It has always been a slight political issue, like anywhere else in the world, I suppose. But it was never it was never in top 5, 6, 7 issues in the country. But what has happened is, parties like Reform have managed to bring this debate and this issue on the sort of number one, and using this to divide our communities. And we need to be very aware of that, that we don't let certain forces use immigration debate. If you want to debate reasonably and in a civil way, it's perfectly legitimate to have a debate around the levels of immigration. But it should not be used to divide our communities. I believe that UK will continue to remain open because it has benefited hugely from immigration, and it's a great beacon when a world which is so divided. London and the UK continues. I mean, I never thought when I came here 25 years ago that I'll be the deputy mayor. I never thought that in my lifetime I'll see a Indian origin Hindu prime minister in this country. I never thought, that so many people, there would be a Muslim mayor of London. All these, incredible progress has been made, and we should not let this progress sort of go backwards. And we must only move forwards and not backwards, and we need to protect it. I mean, it's not a God-given right. Every country, every society, every community has to work on this constantly to make it better. Otherwise, it slips away.
Absolutely right. And we've seen, of course, that as you pointed out, there are vested interests, there are, agendas, whether political or otherwise, that are making politics more divisive than ever before. There's hate crime on the rise. And I remember about a decade ago, Jo Cox, member of parliament from your party, lost her life in her constituency and she was brutally shot dead. What is your view, and what is your almost advice to people watching developments like that? Of course, we get a filtered view. I'm now in India, and I get a very filtered view of what is happening in the UK, and what there's almost like a magnifying glass used to highlight certain issues. So, is it that bad in the UK right now? Is it so unsafe? Are people just being attacked and killed on the roads?
Not at all. First of all, let me be clear. The serious crime in London, is at its lowest since records begin. Okay, so London today is a safer place than it was 25 years ago. So on serious crime, so murder rate, and you can pick any US city. The homicide rate in London is lower than any of the US cities. You can pick any big city from around the world of similar size. The homicide rate in London is lower than that. So anything sort of violent assaults and sort of, that kind of crime. So London remains super safe as a city, and UK as a country. As far as hate crime is concerned, I mean, we need to be very wary of the sort of politics around it. And unfortunately, around the world this happens, but there are always political parties. There are certain political parties or groups or vested interest who will try and sort of divide our communities, and we need to be very wary that doesn't happen. And I always believe that there's, like Jo Cox herself said, there's more in common between us than what divides us. And it is so true. And we need to sort of focus on that. I'm very proud of the fact that we celebrate Diwali in Trafalgar Square. I'm very proud of the fact we celebrate Vaisakhi. We started actually Vaisakhi celebrations on Trafalgar Square, Jewish celebrations around Hanukkah, Eid celebrations. All those things happen in Trafalgar. I'm very proud of the fact that one of the biggest temples in the world outside India is in London. I'm very proud of the fact that it's a big sort of, London is a constellation, and where there is sort of all different faiths and communities live together peacefully. So I think London is a beacon in this very divided world that it is right now. But I just want to reassure, and I hear sometimes, and social media sometimes can sort of disproportionately sort of blow things up. But the reality is that London is one of the safest cities in the world right now.
That's very, very reassuring because we watch it from afar, and obviously panic hits you. People's kids, families, friends, they're all in the UK, and in today's world where there's unfortunate bombings and attacks, it's very, very unsettling to see such news and developments. Coming to children and education, you engage very closely with academic institutions in the UK. What is the future of educational partnerships? You, of course, talked about certain universities and schools setting up, in India and vice versa. What are the streams that you feel are finding more lucrative future avenues?
Well, there's a big opportunity. I mean, UK has always been a great place for learning, and many people from around the world. And in fact, there was somebody checked this, that there was about 58 heads of governments from around the world. The current heads of government were educated in the UK. So UK has always been a great place for learning, and our own sort of great leaders from India, from Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel and Baba Sahib Ambedkar and many others, educated here or came here for education, and so it continues to do that. But now, as India's growth happens, there is a lot of British universities and actually universities from around the world, not just Britain, but are actually opening up campuses in India, because India is a huge market, 1.5 billion people, the largest young population in the world. So the demographic means that we need, and India also needs it, by the way. I mean, in terms of the sheer population is so much, India requires more educational establishment. And then India has got their own excellent universities and institutions, IITs and IIMs and AIMS and so on, and they are expanding as well. So now you have seen some of these universities. I mean, just a couple of years ago, SP Jain Institute from India have opened in London now. So it's happening sort of both ways, and I know there are some of the IIMs are already opening in or looking at opening in some of the other parts of the world as well, and looking at international expansion. So that is happening. I think also the another form of education that happens digitally is very exciting. And I'm a big fan of sort of old school, that sort of teacher student kind of relationship and classroom, and what you learn with having interaction with people of similar age as you, in a university or a classroom setting and in a campus setting. But and India is leading the way on that. I mean, the scale, like these online classes, for example, and online courses, Indians are doing that more than anywhere else in the world. And the way the world is changing, in the old days, it was more around, you have this degree, 1 degree or 2 degree and master's degree, and then you are done, and then you are in your job. But now it's lifelong learning. because things change so much. In fact, what you learn in computer science degree, a lot of that actually changes by the time you get in the job. So the statistics show that if you have a computer science degree, it takes you longer to find a job in the UK than if you don't have a degree. Um, so short courses are very powerful because you can learn quickly, you can learn on the go, you can learn while you're in the job on the weekends, etc. So I think there will be a big surge in these sort of short-term, quick skills challenges. When we talk about education, we don't always just talk about higher education, masters and the PhDs of this world. But in London, in the UK right now, if you are a plumber, you're likely to earn more than a fresh graduate. You're most likely. So we shouldn't lose sight of these sort of courses, because as we sort of go, and by the way, some of these courses are, it will not be impacted by AI so quickly as we think. If you're a plumber, if you're a sort of roofer and so on. So as long as they are well paid and meaningful, then I think India requires so much, housing development and real estate and so on, and which means there is a lot of sort of requirements of plumbers and electricians and roofers and bricklayers and so on and so forth. So I'm a big fan of some of these, what in India are called as the vocational courses. My father was one, by the way. So my father he never went to university. He did like a polytechnic diploma from Bhopal, and then he worked as a mechanic in irrigation department of Madhya Pradesh, and so I it can be a good route to a good employment and good livelihood, and also increasingly as we move towards gig economy, where you work more as a sort of freelance rather than on being on the payroll. Some of these courses are very powerful because it can give you, because there is a rise of these platforms that can help you find jobs, and then you can go that way. So there are a lot of routes to jobs and to work through different sort of educational means: the online, the offline, the big higher education, but also on the sort of vocational, on the ground kind of sort of work. Yeah.
Absolutely right. And there's a need to professionalize some of these, vocations. And there's so many skills. It's skills as opposed to degrees now. And that's heartening for also inclusive education, right? I mean, that way you can cover more and more people. You can offer jobs to more people. And these jobs will adapt, but they will not go away at all. So finally, I want to know what is next for Rajesh Agrawal. We've seen you in the London Square Mile, in politics, in business. When do we see you in Parliament? And are you pivoting away from active politics or pivoting back into it now?
Well, I don't think one can ever pivot away from politics, because politics is public service. And then, if you have that orientation, it's always the case. And whatever you think, you see it from that lens. So I spend still more than half my time in actually socio-political activities, working with different communities. I chair Labour Friends of India, Space for Labour, etc. And so that will sort of continue. Whether I go in Parliament or not, that's a different matter. But you can serve the public in so many different ways. It doesn't not everybody. I mean, it's not just those 650 people sitting on the green benches in the House of Commons are not the only ones actually serving the country. There are many people in many different roles are serving the country wonderfully. And there are many ways to do that. So I still sort of quite engaged in the policy debate in so many ways, on so many areas. But a lot of my focus is on frontier technologies. So I'm focusing a lot on space sector, fintech, quantum technologies, biotech, blockchain, data centers, and those are the things, because a lot of policies are still not quite in place the way they should be. So when we talk about space, I mean, there's a lot of unknown, because we are reaching a territory where we have never been before. I'll give an example. I mean, last week I met with the founder of this space company. They became the first company in the world to manufacture stuff in space. and they were getting raw materials from somewhere, and then it was launched, and then so how do you, trade rules are not in place. What when something is manufactured in space, there are no rules around trading, and so on. Now in the lower Earth orbit, more than 50% of all the satellites are owned by one company, SpaceX. What does that mean for the rest of the world? So all those things. So there are a lot of policy areas which are which requires a lot of work in the new frontier, as we sort of on the drug discoveries and so on. And there's a lot of new areas which have never been explored before. AI is one of them. So that's where I'm focused on right now. But it's all very exciting.
Absolutely right. And uncharted territories or charted territories and the unbeaten path is something that we relate you with. Definitely, it's been absolutely wonderful, Rajesh, for having you here, and thank you for making time and speaking with us at Global Order. We wish you all the best for your future endeavors because that determines also our future. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. This is it for today. We'll be speaking to another interesting guest, a prominent voice from the UK India corridor at Common Ground, presented to you by me, Lakshmi Kaul, for Global Order. Stay tuned. We shall stop recording. Oh, acha.